Aftershock is, in my opinion, the most intense roller coaster at Silverwood Theme Park, and by default, likely the most intense roller coaster in all of the Pacific Northwest. In this video, we'll discuss the pros and cons of this Vekoma Giant Inverted Boomerang, a ride that opened at its park in 2008, though that is a little deceiving, and really this coaster's history goes back to 1982. That was the year where the world's first standard Vekoma Boomerang was constructed, with the first boomerangs opening up in 1984. The idea behind these was to provide a compact, forceful looping coaster. These rides feature less than 1,000 feet of track, but because they're shuttle coasters, riders get to take those inversions, 3 of them, forwards and backwards. It increases the ride time for what would otherwise be a very short coaster. Vekoma would start selling these left and right, and, maybe unfortunately, over 50 boomerangs opened. For a time, this was quite possibly the most popular coaster model in the entire industry. Big parks wanted them to get an inversion-based coaster, but they were also better for smaller parks because of their compact nature. Needless to say, these caught on, and so naturally Vekoma wanted to make some alternates of this ride model to see if those alternates could catch on in equal manner. This started with the Invertigo in 1997. This didn't really catch on though, as only 4 of these were built. This was basically your standard boomerang, except riders hang under the track. It was still an upgrade, but they didn't have the popularity of the original model. So, Vekoma stepped it up one more time. 3 years later, in 2000, they introduced the Giant Inverted Boomerang. This carried the same general concept as the Invertigo, placing the idea of a boomerang under the track, except this completely stepped it up. The Giant Inverted Boomerangs would be much taller and faster than the Invertigos, while also having vertical spikes instead of incline spikes. Another difference is that, unlike the original layout, the track actually crosses over itself, with the station being placed under the vertical loop. For Vekoma's takes on their original boomerang layout, this is definitely the best version. That set the stage for Deja Vu to open at Six Flags Great America in 2001. This was one of 3 Deja Vu Giant Inverted Boomerangs to open at a Six Flags park that year. The other 2 were located at Six Flags Magic Mountain and Six Flags Over Georgia. But unfortunately, none of these coasters lasted more than 10 years at their original park. The one at Magic Mountain lasted the longest, that one closing after the 2011 season. Deja Vu closed at Great America in 2007 and was relocated to Silverwood, where it opened as Aftershock a year later in 2008. The Aftershock name, by the way, was chosen via a name competition, which is kind of fun. More importantly though, this coaster forever changed the skyline of Silverwood Theme Park. Driving up to this park and driving by on the freeway gets you excited for your day, and the first ride you'll probably notice is Aftershock. Those spikes really poke up there. Then again, that shouldn't really be a surprise when you consider the fact that this coaster is almost at hyper heights. Those spikes stand 177 feet in the air. In general, this coaster lives up to the name of Giant Inverted Boomerang. It feels very large when you're standing underneath it, and is a rather imposing ride. This ride definitely has a fear factor draw to it, especially with those big vertical spikes. You can find Aftershock on the left side of the park in Roller Coaster Alley. This is where Silverwood's 4 biggest roller coasters are, and also their 4 best ones, so there's a good chance that as a coaster enthusiast you'll want to spend your most time in here. In addition to the great quartet of coasters, the park's best flat rides are also located in this area. You'll have to walk past all these other great rides though to get to Aftershock. It's located at the very far end of this area, and this ride also marks a dead end. If you want to go somewhere else, you're going to have to turn around and go back. Despite its size and the fact that it's not really on any major pathway, this coaster still draws quite a line. Because of the one-train nature of this coaster and slow dispatches, more on that in a minute, this line can easily build up to 30 or 60 minutes. On a busy day, expect this line to be around the hour mark for the majority of the day. A couple of miscellaneous notes. Number 1, this coaster will not operate unless it is at least 65 degrees. At a lot of parks for summer days, this wouldn't be an issue, but remember that Silverwood is located in Athol, Idaho, so you gotta watch out for that. Number 2 is the fact that this is the most unreliable coaster at Silverwood. If it does open, the chances of it staying open consistently without any breakdowns for the whole day is very slim. These prototype coasters had a good deal of issues in general, part of the reason why they were all removed in short order. One thing that is kind of funny is that at pretty much all times, you'll see a lot of people waiting right outside the ride entrance as their family or friends go in to ride, but there are a lot of people that are not willing to take this coaster on. This ride doesn't really have a theme, and as is typical for a lot of rides at Silverwood, there is no theming in this ride's queue. However, there is some shade at least, which is nice. I do like this coaster's paint scheme though, with the green and blue. Alright, let's talk about probably the biggest issue of Aftershock, and that is the operations. There are a couple of factors at play that make the loading experience on Aftershock take longer and make it more confusing than probably is necessary. To the note of confusion, some people are often confused which row number equates to which row. Now, it might seem simple enough, but this coaster has a staggered seating system. Staggered seating means that the 4 seats are separated into 2 sections. You have 2 seats in the middle and then 2 seats on the outside that are set slightly behind. Technically, each car, which is made up of 4 seats, is considered 1 row. But in reality, and when you're boarding this coaster, it's broken down into 2 rows, the front half and the back half, or the inside portion and the outside portion. So even though there's only 8 cars, you'll find 16 rows to choose from. Once you figure that out and decide if you want to sit on the inside or outside, we get to the operation procedure itself. This coaster mostly has longer dispatch times because operators have to make 2 passes of the train. The first to check the seatbelt, the second to check the over-the-shoulder restraint. I also feel like inverted coasters generally take longer to get people filed out of the station once they grab their belongings. There's pretty tight quarters as you're trying to squeeze through the train and put your stuff on the other side, so sometimes they can cause slight delays there as well. I'm not hating on the operators, nor on Silverwood, but it is worth noting that this coaster sometimes has a very slow moving line. A line that looks like it could be 20 to 25 minutes could in reality be closer to 35 or 40. But okay, alright, enough complaining. Let's get into the ride experience of Aftershock. As mentioned, you're secured by 2 restraints, a seatbelt and over-the-shoulder restraint. Once secured, the entire train will go backwards up the lift hill. This is probably the scariest moment of the ride for most people because you are staring vertically down at the ground from over 150 feet in the air. And not only are you going up a solid height, but because you're vertical, you are hanging in your restraint. It's the only thing keeping you in. The front does have the unobstructed view, but in the back, you're at that vertical angle for longer, and you really feel the height. Then, with very minimal warning, you are released and drop straight down and through the station. This is an awesome drop, and you really get to appreciate this coaster's impressive top speed of 61.5 miles an hour. I think having the tight quarters of the station makes it feel even faster as well, and if you're in the front, you'll really feel the wind in your face. This is a great beginning to the coaster, and while this section focuses on speed, most of it will focus more on intensity. So you fly through the station and up into your first inversions, which is a Cobra Roll. Based on my rides across 2 days in May 2025, I thought Aftershock was running pretty smooth for the most part. If you're going to hit your head on any part though, it's likely going to be the Cobra Roll. Your head can definitely hit the restraint here if you're not careful in keeping your head back. The element itself has a little bit of bite to it, in particular on the ascent into the first half of the Cobra Roll. You then dive down into your next inversion, the vertical loop. The vertical loop here is the more forceful of the 2 inversions. I know technically boomerangs have 3 inversions, but Cobra Rolls are essentially 1 element put together there. All of these inversions are at a good size though. The Cobra Roll stands 110 feet in the air, and a vertical loop stands 102 feet in the air. All of the elements on this coaster are supersized. While the ride has shown some force so far, I think it gets more forceful in the second half. This is where you ascend the second lift hill, catching onto that catch car and ascending even higher. Then with minimal warning, you drop backwards and do it all over again. This drop is a very unique feeling for a roller coaster because it's not typical that you drop this far on a vertical angle going backwards. It feels like a true free fall moment, and once again you really feel the speed. You then immediately enter that vertical loop, and I believe this is the most forceful point of the ride, the backwards vertical loop. Many riders could be slightly disoriented at this point, but this sequence is the best part of the ride. You have that awesome drop followed by this vertical loop, and if you're up front, you'll definitely feel the force even more. And the good news is that this entire sequence is smooth. The only part I found to have maybe a little bit of jerkiness side to side was that Cobra Roll. Then again, most of the parts of this ride are pretty straight, and that's the only part that really has a sharp turn. I do think that the best seat on this coaster is the front for a couple different reasons, but one of the main ones is this backwards drop, the second lift hill. You have the full height at your disposal, and it really increases the free fall feeling that you get. Now, to be clear, you get that in any seat, but you definitely get the most of it up front. The Cobra Roll going backwards has more potential to be rough on you than the first time because you can't brace yourself nearly as well. You'll once again feel some G-force here. Aftershock then kinda has an abrupt ending. After flying through the station, you, somewhat uncomfortably, come to an abrupt stop on the vertical incline of the first lift hill. This will kinda jerk you uncomfortably forward into your restraint. You then pause there for a moment on the lift hill, once again hanging looking straight down, and then slowly descend into the station. There's not a whole lot they could have done to make this less abrupt, but it definitely is a pretty abrupt jerk you saw it a moment ago when this coaster comes to a stop. So even though I say it was running pretty well this year, this, to be clear, is not a buttersmooth coaster. You could bang your head and maybe even have a little uncomfortable pain here on the stop at the end. But in general, Aftershock is a really fun ride. My biggest criticism is probably the track length, as this coaster only has about 1,200 feet of track, but it is intense, and those forces come out at 4.5 Gs at its max. And it is indeed also true that this ride is not for the faint of heart. So, Aftershock's final score for me is going to be an 8.5. This ride does some things really well. It's imposing off-ride and lives up to that reputation on-ride. The speed and freefall feeling on those drops is tremendous, and the ride definitely has force to go around. And because there were very few of these built, and one of them just got removed recently at Six Flags New England, this is a very rare coaster credit, honestly. In fact, this is the only one left operating in the United States, and while Silverwood is in the middle of nowhere, it's worth going out to this park to ride the coasters, especially this one. So let me know what you think of Aftershock down in the comment section below, and what you think of the Giant Inverted Boomerang model from Vekoma. There's always more to discuss, so I'll see you all down there. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.